Everyone, welcome to this Instagram live on refining graduate skills together with my colleague Pam Padayachee. I think it's our third one, or fourth one that we've done, and it's all with the view to highlighting that it's more than your legal skills that you need. It's more than the degree, it's more than academic records and marks and just being good at the knowledge. But there's a lot of substructure to making your career work. There's a lot of things that go underneath what your formal learning gives you, right? So Pam's touched on a lot of topics, so a few key topics so far, and you can check out my YouTube channel, Your Friendly Law Mom, to catch up on our previous lives. But today we're going to be talking about adaptability in the legal profession, professional etiquette, and stress management. So we have ambitious ground to cover, but hopefully we can pack enough value in today's life so that you can perhaps watch it over and over again, or if you're a law student, you can evaluate whether you have all these skills. And of course, in my opinion, the best way to get them is to get into the workforce immediately and learn them, test these skills out, to build up some stamina for the legal profession. Because for many, the legal profession work or practical vocational training becomes the first job most law students or most graduates have ever had. And so with that, you have the double whammy of learning the ropes of legal practice and having to learn all of these soft skills at the same time. Whereas if you go already equipped, you know what you need, you've built up the skill set, and then you go into your practical vocational training. Then of course you are in a much better position, and you can, for the most part, just focus on getting your legal skills, acquiring them, and thereafter building on it as you stay on in the practice sphere. So I'm just waiting for Pam to come on, and then we can start. This is, I think, my last Instagram live for the year. If you're following up until this point, you would have known that I've done on various topics with various colleagues, all with a view to creating resources, to creating conversations. And if you want me to cover anything specific in the new year, we'll be planning with one or two other colleagues coming up in the new year. We're going to do it better. And this year was mostly experimental on Instagram, but hopefully in the new year we can hit the ground running and talk about topics, create conversations that you want to listen into, and then of course you will go back and watch the videos over and over again. So that's a nice thing about Instagram. It's the least hassle to set up, and it's just a matter of date, time, seeing who's available, and then of course the video is available for download so that I can download it and put it on my YouTube channel, and then it's there forever. So as I said, if you haven't seen any of my previous lives or even other videos that I've done, events that I've done, please go to Your Friendly Law Mom on YouTube, and you'll be able to binge watch, if I can call it that. So Pam just informed me that one of her clients decided to call her, so we probably have to hang her a bit, just me. I'm sure those of you who know me, you're kind of used to my rambling by now. And of course, Pam's going to do the bulk of the talking, but maybe I'll just introduce from my side the topic. So, in terms of adaptability, I think with any profession, the worst thing you can do is refuse to change. Because, if we just look at the technological space and the legal profession, AI has kind of taken over in certain aspects of legal practice. So that requires adaptability, maybe things like employment conditions, minimum wage, things like that. And even from a personal perspective, I think if you don't adapt, you don't grow, right? So nobody gives us the perfect set of circumstances and we thrive all the time. Sometimes we have to adapt ourselves, we have to learn new skills, we have to grow in order to make the best of the situation. So that also applies to the legal profession, and I'm sure Pam will expand on that in terms of how it's going to benefit you as a professional and ultimately benefit whatever business you're part of, a law firm business that is. Professional etiquette, I think this is something along with legal ethics that we cannot stress enough. And it varies, I think, between the different branches of the profession. So with me, I was trained in the Shark Tank of the bar. So there are certain things that I learned the hard way that, of course, I didn't think was offensive to start off with. But you find that there are certain, besides like the codes of conduct, the LPC code of conduct, like within the profession, there'll be these unspoken rules about, how you speak to certain people and dressing and, maybe even some bad things like, which of course you can adjust and you can change for yourself. Some bad habits, but by and large, etiquette is key to fitting in. And because we have such a client-facing profession and service delivery is at the forefront, you're going to have to be a practitioner of etiquette, right? And sometimes it's not only professional etiquette, it's things like, responding to clients, looking at somebody when they speak to you, doing what you say you're going to do when you're going to do it, keeping appointments, all that counts as, I would say, etiquette you need in life. But when you are in the legal profession, of course, it's part of how you present yourself as a professional, the way you interact with people that are outside of the field and that are looking to you to provide negative stress, and so that you don't reach capacity and then decide you want to do something up to you. But to know how to mitigate and how to put in place certain practices that will allow you to be aware of your triggers and the things that stress you out naturally, and of course to be able to manage that, and of course to know the difference between good stress and bad stress. I think for me is to know when things are stressful but in a good way, like if business picks up or you get briefed on a very interesting case, then of course that's stressful, but it's a good type of stress. So for me, help with distinguishing between good stress and bad stress is the first step, because our tendency is to lump all stress together, but all stress is not created equal. Okay, so I'm just waiting for Pam is on. I'm waiting for the video to load. Hi Pam, can you hear me?
Hi, I can hear you.
Okay, your video is not loaded yet.
Okay.
Okay, now you're on.
Yeah, sorry for being late. Clients find the most opportune times, um, which is very which actually is very relevant to one of the things that we're going to talk about, which is adaptability. You can't just tell the client, I got to go now, you know. Uh, so, yeah, I heard you talking about stress just now.
Yeah, I was just introducing the 3 topics that you gave me, so you can take it away now.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, as Lisa has introduced, we're going to talk about adaptability in a law firm, professional etiquette, and stress management, right? Excuse my bad hair day. It's really hot in Johannesburg today. So yeah, we're battling. Okay, so one of the things with adaptability is we all battle with it, especially when we are creatures of habit and resistant to change. It really doesn't help us to be that resistant, because sometimes change is the only constant, right? So one has to look at different aspects of being in a law firm and the way you would adapt to each situation. So let's take, for example, if you get the privilege of going to a medium-sized or large law firm, they work on a rotational basis where you rotate in each practice area. I mean, some of them have got quite a few practice areas, so you won't get to do all of that. It's generally on that 6-month period, so you would get to do 4 maybe, right? But the adaptation from, let's say, a commercial rotation going into a disputes or litigation rotation, totally different practice areas, totally different challenges, different expectations. So it's a constant, you just have to keep up with the pace of the change, right? And adapt accordingly. And I think for law students, law graduates, CAs, and the like, it's something very difficult sometimes. And, on one of our last lives, we spoke about the generational thing, where the generation that's going into the workplace now and the generation that is there in leadership roles with their expectations and all of that are very different. So to be able to adapt, and as part of that adaptation is to engage with the people around you, engage with your team, understand what the expectations of that specific team is, what different personalities you have at play, etc. And it just comes back to a lot of the things that we've covered in the previous lives, like the teamwork and getting to know your peers and not throwing each other under the bus, that kind of thing. So I think adaptation in that sense is very important. And also, that overlaps with stress management, because you may not have had that amount of stress, depending on the kind of work you did in a corporate rotation, just depending on that practice area. But maybe in litigation, it is so fast-paced, it's stressful, you really just don't know how to deal with so much of change. Sometimes it all happens in a year. You could be 6 months in corporate, 6 months in disputes in that same year. So by the end of the year, you are just completely emotionally, physically, everything just drained, like some of us, or all of us at this time of the year, working on reserve. So, just having enough resilience, I think, to deal with that amount of change. So that's important. Then another thing which is changing dramatically and drastically in the legal environment is legal technology, right? And one of my clients is about to roll out 2 new systems in January, and that's going to be very interesting, because they're rolling out 2 brand new systems that maybe some of us have worked on, some never heard of it in their lives, but one's a financial system, one's a document management system. But, you know, just reflecting on the firms that I've worked at, and when systems were rolled out, and you would get, you know, and I'm not dissing secretaries or all secretaries, but you would get a handful that would say, but we've been doing this for the past 10 years, 20 years. Why do we need to change that? Why? Once again, change is the only constant sometimes, right? And you just have to adapt and go with the changing times. So because I was close to some of the rollouts of those systems in those firms, you would hear all the backlash, and you know, you would, because you also part of the training process in that, you would also get several whys. It's not a case of attend the training, look at what's being done, click with the trainer, etc. No, that was just not on, right? You always had these people that resisted it. And because of the resistance, the level of resistance, what they ended up doing was input junk into the system. And then what do you get? Junk in, junk out. So one has to be very mindful to embrace, all we're saying is embrace the technology, embrace the new systems, right? And one very important thing, and a lot of people are emphasizing, I mean, legal technologists all over LinkedIn are, you know, are rooting for document automation and several other tools in the market and whatever. What is important for these young individuals to understand is that all of this legal technology is not coming to replace your ability to think. It is giving you the ability to be more efficient, right? And, you know, I have to laugh. There's technology which, and I think I spoke about it briefly in another live as well. There's technology which ensures that you're sending your email to the correct people, okay? So, I mean, it goes back to the point of attention to detail. Are you actually present in your job? You know, and when we talk about stress management, we're going to talk about that as well. Are you present? I know we've been taught to multitask, etc. But with a lot of these stress management tools, they are now telling us to reverse multitasking. They are telling us to do one task at a time in order to be more productive, in order to get the results that we want. So, but you don't see that done in practice, right? Because you would go and stand next to a person's screen and they would have multiple documents open, multiple emails open, hence the confusion. Hence you need technology to make sure you're sending to the correct person, right? So, you know, use the technology, but use it wisely. And I think the junk in, junk out point is a very important point, especially when people are using financial systems. Law firm financial systems are very important, right? So if you're a CA starting next year, pay attention to that training, like give it your undivided attention. I know training at the beginning of the year during induction seems absolutely overwhelming and it sometimes just goes over your head, but pay attention to that, practice those things, those principles, because especially when it comes to law firm accounting systems, if you're putting in junk, then your reporting or the reporting of the firm is inaccurate, right? And that has serious consequences. And furthermore, sometimes some systems allow you to do certain things and you can maybe select multiple entries and do the same change. And unfortunately, other systems, you would have to go and manually change each entry. So think about it very mindfully. when it comes to time entry, make sure you're using the correct matter number, entering your description properly, using the correct punctuation. Those are all things that are very, it may seem unimportant, but it is important, because all those things, besides the reporting side of it, for example, your time entries, that has an impact on how fast a law firm can do their invoicing, right? So if I'm going to now look at something called a pre-bill and start reviewing those time entries, and there's a whole lot of spelling mistakes and, incorrect use of punctuation, or your time has been entered into the wrong matter, etc. The time I spend editing that is my possibly billable time. I could have been doing something else. And furthermore, it is then going to take that team's administrator another amount of time to edit those things, and then only go to finance, and then only be billed to clients. So everything is like a domino effect, and it all just depends on that correct time entry, for example. I see you with some expressions there. Are you agreeing with what I'm saying? Because it seems to be resonating.
I'm mostly trying to stay awake.
So
I think what's pertinent and what I'd like to highlight for the younger ones is that these days there's a very short attention span for things. But I think the point you're trying to make is that if you pay attention in the short term, then of course it means productivity or in the long term. So if you have all of these tools, if you have all of these methodologies that you need to adapt to, you rather adapt quickly, become au fait with them, do them right as quickly as possible, so that in the long term, your ability to adapt means that in the long term there's going to be more productivity.
No, absolutely. And I find that the most important thing now, or the highlights going in, especially into the new year, is going to be emphasis on more and more technology, and the use of AI, for example, and that's a whole different topic in terms of research. So also be very mindful of that, and whether it's really speaking to your point, etc. So don't just think blindly, okay, technology is here to help me, I'm putting in a few search words and then that's going to do my job. No, it's not. You still actually need to use your brain. And the nice thing about being adaptable is that it's important for your advancement, because maybe you don't follow the traditional course of law, but it takes you down another road. And that just, your resilience and your adaptability will just be your strengths in that journey, because you've decided to go on a journey that is not traditional, it's not straightforward. You are sometimes left to your own devices to come up with your own systems, with your own processes. I asked somebody last week, do you have a standing operating procedure? And she looked at me and she's like, no. How long have you been in business? 5 years. And 5 years down the road and you don't have a standard operating procedure, that's quite worrying, right? So it's those little things. And so you must always just be open to learning new things, evolving, changing with the demands in this profession. This profession is coming with more and more demands day by day. We can see it all over social media. We hear of it on a daily basis. So adaptability, I think, is very important for our young workforce going into corporate or to law firms next year, and my heart is with you. And so let's go on to professional etiquette, right? So with professional etiquette, I mean, there's so much that we can talk about, but in the interest of time and, like you said, the attention span, and maybe next year we look at doing shorter lives, or going live on other platforms as well, just to engage with people. So, professional etiquette starts with things like punctuality, your appearance, your responsiveness. So, appearance and dress code. The thing that really stuck in my mind after our panel discussion was when one of the panelists shared how her CA arrived to go to court.
with the
And
mini skirt.
yeah. So very important. And I think what helps is, a lot of firms have a dress code policy. So, read those policies. Firms also do refresher train. Well, they do your induction training and then they do refresher training just to remind you of those little things. And with your dress code comes how to carry yourself, your general etiquette. I was speaking to someone the other day and she said she had a director of a firm saying to her, "Can you please teach the CAs some etiquette?" And she asked, "What do you mean? Like what specifically?" And he says, "They're sitting in a staff canteen licking a fork, like licking a fork." And she obviously restrained herself from laughing. But then he went on to add and say, and then you have some of them that have their legs under their backsides and they're sitting on the chair like that. But they're in a staff canteen. But bear in mind that the staff canteen is also open to clients. So if I am in a client meeting and and I end at lunchtime, I may think of offering my client to come and have lunch with me before he leaves, right? So my client is going to be walking and he's going to see this person licking the fork like they're licking an ice cream and then sitting on their legs, right? So it's very important, like, to know how to carry yourself. And this is something, and the reason why it came up in discussion is it's a training that we are going to be offering next year, in terms of personal branding, your etiquette, your general etiquette, when it comes to moving around in your workplace, the way you sit, the way you speak, being very mindful of those little things. Yes, we were all not raised speaking the Queen's English and making sure our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed. But when in Rome, do as the Romans. Right? You don't have to pretend, but try your best. And I find sometimes with people that try too hard and then use English that you would write with as opposed to just spoken English, right? So you do get those people. So yes, you wanted to add something.
Yeah, and I was just reminded of when I was in high school. I went to all girls high school, and one of the points in the code of conduct was that whether it was school hours or after school hours, we could not do anything. We couldn't do X, Y, Z while still in our school uniform. So whether we were on the premises or whether we were off the premises, like I remember one particular point was amusing, and I didn't have a boyfriend at the time. It said you couldn't cuddle your boyfriend in your school uniform. So we had to obviously, and we had a library nearby that all of us would go to wait for our pickup after school. So we had to carry ourselves out very well in our school uniform. Alternatively, we had to carry clothes to change so that when we were on the roads and walking perhaps walking to the library, or maybe in the shopping centers after school, that if you wanted to do anything, regular or civilian like, that we could actually do it in our regular clothes as opposed to our school uniform. So I think that's a very, it's a pity we don't have uniforms in workplaces. I think we could really benefit because it puts you in a certain stricture. It does
Yeah.
put you, it has a way of subconsciously putting you into a straitjacket. And if there's a specific rule that says when you're in your company uniform or you're in a company vehicle and you're not allowed to do X, Y, and Z. So I was just
Yeah.
reminded of that high school
No,
thing
that's
that we learned.
absolutely true. It really is absolutely true. And one of the other things we spoke about was, what's the etiquette during a meeting? Are you looking at your cell phone, or have you got your cell phone turned around, so that it doesn't distract you? And I think I shared also that I sat in a meeting where 2 out of the 3 individuals that were with me kept looking at their cell phones and their laptops. And, I think the important thing to bear in mind is that when you do something like that, it's like when you're with a family member and you're staring at your cell phone, you're not present. Okay, it just boils down to presence, and it's also disrespecting the next person, right? Because that other person has shown up for you, but
Yeah.
you're not showing up for them. So, respect is earned. These are how relationships are built. And these are just all those little things that will help you along your career path. And, first impressions last. So if you are this young person in the meeting and constantly looking at your phone, then the person's going to think, okay, it is just this generation. They have got a short attention span. They're not paying attention. What is up? Have I come to the right law firm? Is this the caliber of candidates that they are taking on? So your behavior also basically exhibits the law firm, right? Because you're there as the representative of the law firm. And the same thing with, responsiveness to emails and to telephone calls and things like that. And I always say to people, and I think we covered this quite extensively when it came to our written and verbal communication session, where if you are not in a position to respond to an email immediately, just send an email back to say, I acknowledge receipt, I will come back to you shortly, etc.
Yeah.
And then also the turnaround time speaks volumes of the law firm that you're working at. Because the longer you take, they're going to think, okay, so this is what this kind of law firm, this is the type of services that they offer. So do we want to come back? Do we even want to bother giving the instruction? No, we don't. So, I think that's very important. It's reflective of the firm's commitments to client services and professionalism at the end of the day. That's what it boils down to. Then punctuality. Punctuality is the cherry on the top for me. Okay. So a few months, had a training scheduled for 9:00, and I was here. It was going to be done remotely. And I started the training on Teams, assuming this person was behind her laptop. And only to find that she accidentally took it, answered as a video, and she was in the lift, still gathering her bag and etc. So I was like, okay, do you want to settle down before we start, so that, we have your attention? And believe you me, she did. I said, it's fine. I have allocated this time, so I'll wait for you. She then took advantage of that and settled down, put her stuff down, went and got her breakfast, and then joined the meeting. So, if a meeting is scheduled for 9:00, it's not scheduled for your arrival. It's scheduled to begin at 9:00. Okay?
Yeah.
But if you're also running late, and I had that happen on Monday, where a client was running late and she didn't have my number. So here we were on the call. I said, okay, let's just give her about 5 minutes or whatever. And then I called her and she's like, oh, Pam, I had car trouble. And so can I call you in about half an hour? Fine, you see. So that was out of her control because she didn't have my number. But here you had advance notice of this meeting beginning at 9 o'clock. So once again, you're disrespecting the other person's time. And what I find is that, there's so many dynamics, especially when it comes to a hierarchical organization, right? Is if you are another professional, maybe they will pitch up on time. If you are not a non-legal person, maybe there's, okay, she can wait a bit, and that's the attitude. But no, my friend, I am non-legal. However, I know a little bit more, or maybe 5 times more that you actually know. You may know the law, but I know the other stuff. So please do give me that respect. Don't put me in a box. And so it's that mutual respect. And I think for the young generation that is going into the workplace now, that is so important. Understand that you are very low down in the food chain. Those secretaries or support people and non-legal people, please respect them. Give them the respect they deserve, because they may be non-legal staff, but like I always say to people, it's those non-legal people in that organization that are the very foundation of that organization. Because if your admin is not up to scratch, then you will not be able to open a matter, for example. Okay, so because you need these non-legal people to help you to open the matter. So just be respectful. Punctuality, it really says a lot about you as a person, even though I was late today. It was beyond my control. So again, commitment to professionalism, and that I think is so important when you are very early in your career, and when people have interactions with you and you've ticked all of these boxes, then they know that even if you go 5 years down the line and you decide you want to go open your own practice and venture on your own, they would not hesitate to come and engage your services, even though you are a one-man law firm, right? And then our last point for today, you can see that I'm keeping it very succinct. So, all right, is stress management. And I think that is such a massive topic for discussion. Could go on about it, but there's so many things to bear in mind, right? And when I ask people, are you sure you want to do law? Are you sure you want to complete your articles? And they're like, sometimes halfway in, they're like, oh, I don't know. Hey, there must be easier ways to make money, like become an influencer. So, you have to be that passionate, in love with this profession to see this profession through. Because let's face it, there's no way to sugarcoat it. You just have to rip the Band-Aid and say, this is a stressful profession. And if you are prepared to go in with the necessary tools and the necessary not, then maybe, right? So one of the things is, which makes me think about a client that had a candidate attorney that would have a very big lunch. And then after lunch, his productivity levels would just be depleted. Okay? And when she said this, I reacted the same way you're laughing. And so I just laughed. I genuinely laughed. And she's like, no, Pam, it's not even funny, because I cannot get this guy to do anything after lunchtime. But, as funny as it sounds, it experience that I've identified my triggers that make me feel lethargic, or those foods that actually energize me and I'm more productive, right? Um, so it's to identify those things. If you are rather a big breakfast person and that's your fuel for the day, and then at lunchtime you're going to have something very light, because if you have something heavy again, it's going to put you into that slump, then don't do it. Then
Mm.
you know, at 3 o'clock kind of, we need an energy boost, so we need sugar or caffeine or whatever it is, but to make healthier choices, right? And I think very often when we get so caught up in the busyness of life, it's
Mm.
like my accountant says, you just grab whatever is close by, and generally
Mm.
that's a bag of crisps, right? Um, but it's not good. So maybe have a fruit next to your desk or something like that. So it's healthy lifestyle choices and relaxation, you know,
Mm.
um, finding out what are the techniques that help you. A lot of people, and it's flooding social media once again, the concept of mindfulness, and that's where they're teaching you where to be more present, to live life purposefully, which a lot of us don't do. Most of the time we're on
Mm.
autopilot. And I've been to mindfulness training in the past, and it's really an eye opener. So, when you work, you don't even have to think or look at stuff. Even if you are taking the same route to work, it just, your day kind of feels like it's flowing, but
Mm.
you literally zoned out, right? But whereas if you had to change your route to work, and maybe it's actually more scenic, it's more relaxing, less traffic, trying
Mm.
those little things makes a big impact on your day. And to a lot of people, especially the generation we're working with at the moment, and guys, please don't get us wrong when we keep talking about the generation, it is the harsh reality. Okay.
Yeah.
We wanted different things from our lives, you want different things from your life, right? And the one big thing that this generation that is currently in the workplace is, and going into the workplace, their number one priority is, I want a work-life balance, which is not really a balance. You can never strike a balance. It's not like the scales of justice. So you just have to work with where you are in your life, and work with that as best you can, and navigate through your career and your stress using all of these different tools and techniques. So breathing is a big one. I mean, you see all of us now wearing our fitness devices, our fitness watches, and those even allow you to take those short breaks and to have those breathing exercises. So take advantage of that. Meditation is something that doesn't come to people very easily. I'm one of those people where I have a monkey mind, um, and I think where people get meditation totally wrong, and that is why the advocates of mindfulness say being mindful is a meditation. So,
Mm.
like earlier I said to you, someone decided to mow their lawn. But besides the fact that I was frustrated that it was going to affect my life, I had to just embrace it and allow him to do what he wanted to do, and listen to the noise, right? And be aware of the noise. So mindfulness is like that. And I think meditation is very much the same thing, where instead of trying to say to yourself, I want to get rid of these thoughts, because we have billions of thoughts going through our mind, it's impossible to get rid of them. So the
Mm.
point, or the takeaway from a meditation should be to notice those thoughts, acknowledge that you're having them, consider them, don't judge them in any way, and just let them flow, because they are going to be short-lived. It's just going at the speed of lightning, all these thoughts, right? But for people like myself who cannot sit still and close their eyes, I use different techniques. I do coloring in. I listen to music. I just close my eyes and I listen to music, and that helps me a lot. And I was one of those same things at the same time, but present in one task at a time. If I have no choice but to multitask, I will, but I feel less stressed than I was as as a full-time employee, where I was doing several things at the same time all the time. But when you change your method of working, you definitely get a lot more done. So I'm just not preaching from a textbook or what I've seen online. I've tried it for myself, right? So, the coloring in works out very well because you're concentrating. It's something that, we learned in preschool and we've dismissed after that. And then there was a buzz about adult coloring around 2015, 2016, and the positive effects that it has on your brain. And the other thing is that a lot of people tend to think that if you have mental health issues, then it's not a big thing. But I was in a meeting and they were talking about this, and people also don't realize that there are certain disabilities that cannot be seen that are related to mental health. So maybe, and it's also, once again, a generational thing where mental health was not recognized in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even the 90s, right? Potentially. It's just kind of come more to the surface of recent, and people are now realizing, okay, my mind matters, I matter, so, and the important thing is to remember, if you have or suffer from one of these things, which could be anxiety, maybe you have bipolar disorder, or anything for that matter that you feel affects your mind, it's absolutely important to disclose that to your employer so that they have context, and in terms of employee wellness, etc., they can help you navigate through those things, right? They can offer the support, and I mean, a lot of corporates and law firms prioritize mental health of the employees. So, it's a matter of, I can only help you if you tell me what's wrong. The same thing applies. So I can't read your mind. So you need to tell me in a very safe environment, and understand that it's safe to tell me. And also, therapy just doesn't mean that you're mad. We all need to talk to somebody. We all have to navigate through life. Yeah. So, and therapists sometimes could be your best friends that are non-judgmental to you. Could be, my mom used to say to me, bless her, she used to say to me, you sometimes are better off going and talking about how you feel and your problems to a complete stranger, because there is absolutely no judgment. They do not, it's an absolutely neutral ground that you're treading on, or you're disclosing in, and a safe environment for you. And funny enough, where that comes from is that You know when these old people go to public hospitals and they have to sit there the whole day? That's where it comes from. And I know why you're laughing. So it comes from there, because my mom would come home and say, oh, I heard the story and I pray to God this doesn't ever happen to me. And it was obviously that person's safe environment, because it was people in the same age group that could relate, but also not judge. So, be very mindful of your circle as well. So your circle also determines how you would feel towards your current position, your future career path. And, it's like your tribe. Be mindful as to who your tribe is, because sometimes I think our tribe could probably be our worst enemies, because they feed us the negativity and say, yeah, well, oh God, why did you choose to study law? It sucks. It does this, it's that. And then maybe that person is an influencer, on another platform, and is making tons more money than you are. And you just don't know after this 2 years whether you have a future here or you don't, etc. So that's very important. And managing your time properly. We spoke about time management briefly in one of our other lives, but I think time management is so important. Setting aside time for self-care for yourself. I was on a webinar also a few months ago, and the lady said that her manager knew not to expect her into the office by 9, because she is very keen on her fitness, and she's got kids to see to in the morning. So it's kids, fitness, and then work, right? So, and she said that she knows that her fitness ensures that she will have a productive day. It's just like some people, at 5 o'clock, after work is officially over, then they go off to the gym, and it's an hour in the gym, dinner with the family, and then back to the grind. And they don't mind it. You know why? Because they've struck that balance in their lives, and they've taken care of themselves first before. And I think with a lot of stories about that you hear about burnout and people just having breakdowns, etc. It's important. It really is important. Why would you want to get to a point of complete burnout before you have this massive wake-up call to start taking care of yourself, right? So self-care, time management, and, once again, the purpose comes back. If you are working on a specific task, then see that task through, or alternatively say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to actually just, and obviously depending on timelines, right? I'm going to spend an hour on this, then I'm going to stop and I'm going to jump onto something else. And because of attention span issues, people need to do that more often. Because when you're sitting here, I experience that. If I'm sitting and formatting like yesterday, a 65-page document, after about 10 pages, I start feeling a bit bored. Then I get up, I do something else, come back, it goes much faster. And then once I reach that kind of level of boredom again, get up, do something, even if it's just moving your body around. And that's important. And, if you can take anything away from this life in terms of self-care, is that when we sit at these desks all day, every day, even after 25 years, your wear and tear begins to take a toll, okay? So you must always understand that money you can always make. This body of yours you can never replace. And as we get older, if you haven't planned financially properly in your younger days, and you foresee that you are going to be working for a much longer time, then that's more of a reason to actually just take care of yourself. So sitting and living these sedentary lifestyles are taking a toll on a lot of people right now. Back and neck problems, and therefore a lot of medical aids, and this is something that people don't know and maybe should be made aware of, is that some medical aids actually offer a back and neck program. So, we don't understand the ergonomics behind sitting at our desk all day, every day, and that's very important because that's where sitting on your leg does not help you on the chair, uh, slouching in your chair does not help you. Leaning forward and staring at your computer like that does not help you. So, look at the ergonomics. And it's so interesting that some schools, especially online schools, right, for example, are teaching the kids at this young age about the ergonomics. That's one of the aspects that's covered in computer applied technology, for example, the level of your mouse, the level of your chair, your screen level, etc. So those are a lot of things, and I say it again, generationally, that our current workforce has not been exposed to. There was very little education around it. And then the workforce that's probably your, let's say, grade 10, grade 11s now, are going to be a completely different can of fish altogether. If we think dealing with balance now is important, or trying to have that balance, they are going to give us a serious wake-up call. I just have that feeling, because they are now more aware of, and especially it goes back actually to school, if you think about it, because there's a lot of skills that a lot of us should have learned in school, which would have held us in better stead going into tertiary, going into the workplace. And, there was a debate the other day, or discussion about the CAPS curriculum versus IEB. And I was of the opinion that I think IEB should be rolled out throughout South Africa, because, it really teaches. And one of the things that I was very tempted to put on here was analytical skills and the ability to analyze situations and matters carefully. But that will be for another live, for the new year. But I think that the IEB examination authority and the way the curriculum is structured there provides the kids of today, right, at this point, with that critical thinking to analyze certain situations, etc. And if they're learning this at the age of 15, 16, can you imagine the kind of individuals they're going to be in the workplace? Okay, so that's why I say totally different generational. So just to kind of round up, because we've done really well, is boundaries, right? Boundaries is something that can be very, controversial, right? Because I notice, and something that I've even asked some of my friends that are still secretaries. And it became controversial during COVID, for example, where people didn't have to travel to work, okay? So they woke up normal time, they were going to start work, and what did they do? So their working hours was from maybe 7:30 to 4, but they logged on at 6 o'clock. And so your manager saw that you were on at 6 o'clock, and then you started working at 6 o'clock, right? And then when it came to like 4:30 or 4, you didn't need to travel back home. So you just stayed on, right? Now, with all fairness to all employers out there, who didn't set the boundary? And I ask my friends this, and they think I'm cruel. But it's the harsh reality. You could have taken that 1 hour and gone and read a book, or you could have done some exercise or walked around the car if you missed the car, something. But you understand, you opened yourself up to that. So now 5 years later or 4 years later, please don't complain that I can't log off at 4:30 anymore, because there's the expectation, because you created it. So it's very important, I think, for youngsters going into an organization is to understand what they're getting themselves into, and also depending on the organization's culture and values and all of those things, because you do have organizations that are emphasizing mental health, they're emphasizing importance on family life, etc. And if you are given something at 5 and you need to leave, because a lot of times CAs, you hear the comment being made that we can't leave before our bosses, right? So if it's 5 o'clock and there's the expectation to carry on working because now my boss is there, so maybe I must only leave now at 7 after he leaves, right? But honestly speaking, if you are now taking public transport and you live a good couple of kilometers away, it's important for your own safety in this country to leave at 5 p.m. Get home to your safe destination, have your dinner, and log in again. Yes, okay, there will be those moments where it's beyond your control. Client is barking down your manager's throat, and once again, your domino effect. But set healthy boundaries. Make those arrangements, set those expectations down, early on in your career, earlier on in your job, and this applies to any job for that matter, so that people don't see you as, and very often when you don't want to work beyond a certain time, I think some people are scared to set that impression that, oh gosh, I don't like to work, I'm a clock watcher, etc., etc. But it's the harsh realities of the country that we live in, the risk factors with traveling at late, especially nowadays, irrespective of whether you're male and female, it affects both alike. So, you need to set those boundaries so that you have a successful career ahead of yourself.
Okay. I'm so content to sit and listen, but yeah, this I think on that last point, point on stress management, um, I think it's something I've been test driving this year. Just trying to create, I think, trying to cultivate self-awareness among the younger, the younger ones, candidate attorneys, pupil advocates. Because I think a lot of the stress also can be mitigated, like you said, if we are mindful, if we are self-aware. So if you know that, you're susceptible to, you know, shouting, or you know that you have a certain trigger points, or if you know that maybe you are a victim of, sexual violence, and handling those cases are not going to be for you, then you can take steps. I think a lot of the time we just, like you said, we go on autopilot, and we're like, okay, we don't understand sometimes why we're getting stressed out. So just like, you just got to cultivate a self-awareness on in different areas, that can significantly reduce the amount of negative stress. And also, I mean, we also have the positive type of stress, which is, where you are given a case to get to work with the advocate, and you have to do research, and it's stressful, but it's nice at the same time. So for me, I find like the self-awareness about your triggers, and your lifestyle choices, like you said, the foods that put you, that predispose you to lethargy, and or even not having meal times. Like if you're a person like me, one of my goals for this year was to have like my meal times because I was a big skipper of meals. Then you set alarms to eat basically because if you're not fueled for the day, then of course it doesn't help your brain. And so it's all these things that I feel that we can take charge of um, that can significantly reduce stress in life, stress in the workplace and stress in relationships because we know we're getting to know ourselves. So I've been trying to cultivate that among in my posts where I'm trying to marry psychology and law and just getting the CAs to think critically about, maybe they're coming from childhood shame, maybe so that stresses them out because they're not realizing they're getting triggered. So if you're a little bit curious about yourself, then of course you can learn to manage yourself better. Maybe even go to therapy. Like I said, we all need
No,
therapists, and
absolutely.
ultimately we all need safe people to talk to. We all need safe, that non-judgmental. I think that's why I probably became very, very famous because people even say like, you're so kind to us. Why are you so helpful? Because in our profession, nobody wants to give you the time of day. Everyone wants to pretend like they were born into, this profession and they came out of the womb with a set of law reports in their hand. We want to pretend, right? But no one wants to be real. So yeah, I think that's my 2 cents on that last point there. You want to add something?
No, I think that's important. And with like youngsters, I know like just through speaking to some of them and engaging with them, um, a lot of them are taking care of themselves,
Mm,
whether it is, in the form of exercise or whatever else if they find comfort in. I
mm,
think, when you start working, one of the things that I would maybe suggest for people to try or recommend is identify your stresses and write them down, journal them, and say,
mm,
you know what,
mm,
when this happened or when this person speaks to me, I see red, like boom,
mm,
or this is how I react. Like, I said to
mm,
somebody today, I was like, um, I just want to know if a meeting request or a calendar invite is not in your calendar, why on earth would you call me to ask me if the meeting is taking place today? There is absolutely nothing there, but you are asking me about it. Why? And that stressed me out. And
mm,
like I'm like, I really do overlook stupidity sometimes, but that is just laziness. All you need to do, and
mm,
when I spoke to the other individual today about it, he said, but why do they call you without looking at the calendar? And I'm like, that is the question I'm asking myself because I've
yeah,
had 3 inquiries about the same meeting. Now, seriously, guys.
yeah.
So identify those stresses, write them down, and even if you had to write something funny as to how you would react in that situation, it's an outlet. And then
Mm,
likewise with your when you are thriving, to sit down and just write, oh wow, like you said, I'm working with an advocate. This matter is so interesting. It's scary because I have to make a good impression to the advocate, but this is what I did. And it's nice to then open that journal or that pad and reflect on it. And it's
mm,
also in terms of personal growth. And I've done this on numerous occasions where I would sit down and write down something that really annoyed the hell out of me. And if I
mm,
could think of the things that I would say to this person that was annoying me, and I would
mm.
just fold it and put it away. And, when I was cleaning
Yeah.
out, then I would, like, I remember I did a massive cleanup in like 2015, but it was of boxes of stuff when we moved from our previous house into this one. And I sat and I read this one letter, and I had the biggest laugh because those irritations that happened then are no longer irritations. And what does that say? that is how you've grown as an individual. So those little things which were your big things at that time no longer affect you.
Mm. Yeah, I'm I have imaginary conversations. So fortunately, nobody sees me then because they might think I'm a bit psychotic. But I will just have that. I will just let it out. Uh, at the risk of that document being found, I think I would be paranoid about it being found. But I just, I just have that imaginary conversation and I get it out of my system. Um,
Yeah,
you know, and I think for me, I resonate with what you said about, you know, you ask yourself, oh, you're very aware now, you've been irritated about something. And I think I've cultivated it well enough in the last year or so to understand, okay, I to ask myself why am I being irritated, and to see, okay, objectively speaking, would somebody else get irritated at this? Or then of course very quickly I come back to myself and I say, oh, I'm just very tired, or I'm hungry, so the
yeah,
thing is a little bit exacerbated. So it's having that kind of curiosity, as opposed to just like thinking out of your what they call your lower brain or your limbic brain, where you just want to lash out, you just want to let the person know. Because in the heat of irritation and anger, I heard this in one of my therapy videos. You think you're the absolutely right, like you are Jesus. You're like no one can tell you anything, so you have this tunnel vision. But when I have those very those aggravated reactions, I think, is something, I won't say is something wrong with my reaction. I will say, is this reaction justified? Or am I just sleepy? Am I hungry? Have I got a lot on my plate? And of course, it also helps to hear from somebody else. So you can, what, did I, even though it was an internal reaction, was it actually, objectively speaking, did you also feel irritated or not? So I think for those, especially for those, and I started off the video by saying that for a lot of law graduates, practical vocational training is their first job. So you have this double whammy of I've got to learn the legal ropes and I've got to learn workplace skills. So if you can help yourself, because no one's going to help you really with the soft skills. No one's going to tell you, okay, you need to know time management, you need to know this, you need to know that. The principal attorney expects you to have that package when you walk in. They just expect you to have it. And so when you start showing up deficits, they start getting irritated because I spoke to a law firm owner yesterday. He wants to be able to help them, but he just doesn't have the time. And of course, work can't suffer because he's taking time out to teach his juniors. So it's that kind of tension as well. So they're expecting you to walk in with a certain package. And if you don't, and if it's your first job, then remember you're going to have to learn on two fronts. And one of the easiest ways to learn is the self-awareness thing, where you start to say, if somebody is constantly asking, if someone always checking up on my time management, for example, or if someone's always correcting me about my etiquette, could it be that I'm lacking in certain things? Because some people, I know in my own experience, they can just come out and tell you don't do that. They won't appreciate the fact that you might never have been taught, right? They will just come out and say, no, you don't do that. Or when I was at the bar, they'll say, there's one advocate complained to the secretary. The secretary told me that you don't walk in chambers barefoot. And I was like, okay. So they're very blunt in the way they will say it to you. But then you say, am I justified in getting upset? Or maybe it's something I never learned. And therefore I need to make
yeah,
a quick adjustment, as opposed to getting offended, maybe, getting people on my side, which is what we tend to do in those situations. Just ask yourself objectively, is it something that I should have known and I didn't, wasn't taught? Okay, let me adjust my behavior. And the same thing with stress management. If I know I'm coming from a certain background where my father was a very abusive authority figure, and every time a principal attorney gives me an instruction, I have this ODD. They call it oppositional defiance disorder. I bristle at receiving instructions. Okay. If I know I'm coming out from that background, then of course I can be curious. Say, okay, this is going to interfere with my role as a CA. It's going to affect my career progression. I must be able to take feedback, criticism, general instructions in this environment. So I need to help myself. I need to go for therapy. I need to maybe learn more about, how to mitigate my triggers, things like that, because I have to make it work. And like I said, no one's going to give those skills. No one's going to say, hey, it looks like you have ODD. Because every time I give you an instruction, you have an attitude. Or they might tell you that, and then you might get offended, whereas that's the reality, that maybe you have blinkers on and you can't see.
Yeah,
So it's all
yeah.
so it's all these things that you go into the PVT and you're expected to. You just have these expectations of you as a CA or even as a pupil advocate, and if you're not aware of stuff that makes you sensitive, makes you predisposed, and if you don't work on those things, then of course it's gonna make the job a lot harder. It's gonna make learning the ropes a lot harder. So I would say, like, just help yourself. I always say, take the power back. Don't give it all away and say, I'm in articles now. My principal has all the power. They are there to teach me. Most people learn very rudely that the principal attorney is not there for your good. You are just passing through in their eyes. So a lot of the initiative you got to take, whether it's for your legal learning or whether it's for your personal learning and development, you got to take the initiative. You got to take the bull by the horns and retain some of the powers. You can actually have a qualitative experience and a qualitative and hopefully a less traumatic introduction to the profession.
No, exactly. And I think, what's most important is that before we're anything, whether we're a legal graduate, a legal student, or whatever we are still first human. And
Yeah.
with being human comes a lot of the challenges. And I had a good laugh when I was watching one of our other lives where I was speaking about the hormones and a lot of things happening, in the workplace with females and males. And somebody was actually talking about it yesterday. Andropause. Nobody talks about andropause. That's male menopause. And
Mm.
there's a lot of dynamics around that. So, I think gone are the days where you would say when you reach the door of your workplace, you leave yourself, your home, your issues
Mm.
there. You can't do that. You're not a robot.
Mm.
You can't file it away for a time and diarize those things. You just have to go through these things. And one of the other important things, I think, from a South African perspective, we come from such a diverse community. And
Mm.
like you said, if you've come from a background where this is how your dad was, or mental health was disregarded,
Mm.
empathy was disregarded, all of those things,
Mm.
we all come, it's generational trauma, right? So we
Yeah.
all come from that. Now, it's up to the generations that are now being aware, being self-aware, to stop that generational trauma, recognize
Yeah.
what is happening with you, and just be kinder to yourself. And I think with a lot of incidents of, suicides and all of those things happening, in the legal profession, out of the legal profession. I heard this week alone that two of our high school friends resigned from their jobs because they were so highly stressed without
Mm.
having other employment. They're taking a bit
Wow.
of a sabbatical. Um, and bless them for
Yeah.
making that decision, because they obviously realize that they matter, and one of the
Mm.
other things that I saw on social media this week was that, especially for our male counterparts and colleagues and
Mm.
friends and family, um, is that when it comes to mental health, you're too macho to admit it. So please don't be macho. It's okay to not be okay.
And
Quoted
yet, and
by,
yet, and yet,
um,
it starts with men.
yeah,
Mental health starts with every.
and that came from a man. That came from a man that just recently won the Influential Men Awards in KZN this weekend. And he said it's okay to not be okay
Right.
and to go through the motions. So I think very important, a lot of important points. And I think and I pray that the workplace, wherever that might be, uh, of the future is going to change. Where all of these things are taken into account. I can see a lot of positive change around that already. So, be a better place to work in and a more productive place, and just get people become their true selves. And so then we won't have the job hopping and the
Yeah.
no, it's not stimulating anymore and whatever, and sometimes sit in organizations without any growth for a number of years and walk out of there and not be marketable. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also share that hope. I think the more conversations we have like this, the more we catalyze people, I think, into making their own changes. I think if we wait for the system or a system to change, it's never going to happen. So I think the more effort we make in catalyzing people to take responsibility,
Mm.
especially when you're young, because when you are young and you have all these good I mean, these soft skills are life skills. Okay, I know when I was in primary school we had the subject called guidance and right living. I don't know if you had that.
Yeah.
It was a whole period, right,
Yeah.
where they taught us. I mean, they taught us stuff. So all of these things that we are terming soft skills and we're saying it must be refined, they are all life skills. So
Life
it's
skills.
stuff that,
It's life
and
skills.
the beauty of your brain is that even if you were raised in an environment where you didn't learn, you learned how to only instant gratification. You didn't learn how to think critically. The front part of your brain wasn't engaged. You're always in survival. The nice thing about your brain is that you can train it. So that you don't have to enter, if you don't have all of the soft skills we've discussed in all of the lives up until today, you can make a decision to learn those things. The brain is marvelous. You can create an entire new brain from the one you were born with. So really the power, the choice is up to you. And the skills will be transferable between life and, I think that's probably the epitome of work-life integration, how they call it, where the
Yeah.
skill that you have in life is the skills that you bring into the workplace, is the skills that you take back out into your life, so that you're not living as a dichotomous being. So ultimately, what we've been trying to teach you is life skills, which if you learn at a young age, if you plan to get into the professional space, understand it is by default going to be a lot more brutal, and it's going to be harder, and it's going to be less sympathy. So the faster you learn these things or you refine them, then when you get into that space and nobody is, holding your hand, you actually have some scaffolding, you have something to stand on, you have a backbone, and you can use that, you can build on that, and of course you can ultimately become a better legal professional.
Yeah, and like some people say, yeah, I've heard someone say that he admires people that are streetwise. And when he says streetwise, he's talking about, like back in the day, if our ability to jump onto a bus and go to campus, or take a taxi somewhere and be that kind of streetwise. And that kind of streetwise people are your ultimate survivors, right? I'm not saying if you've come from a privileged background, you're not a survivor, but it's those people that actually thrive in very challenging situations, whether it's in a workplace or life, because it's like some people, I don't know whether you've seen it on social media, if you read their about section, it says from the University or Life of Hard Rocks or something, some
The School of Hard Knocks.
yeah,
The School
something
of
like
Hard
that.
Knocks.
So it's basically that, and I think sometimes, and this is also just another conversation, it's those types of individuals that come from that kind of background, etc., that battle to secure the articles, but really come from a good place, a hardworking place, and things like that. And like I said, that's another conversation about looking at how they actually recruit for articles, because I think one of the saddest parts of this whole process, and with having so many people ask where are the opportunities, do you know of anybody looking for articles, etc., especially at this time of the year, is they don't get, I think, sufficient feedback as to why.
They don't.
It's like, and sometimes people have this caveat to say, you can apply, but if you haven't heard from us in 14 days, then consider your application unsuccessful.
That's laziness.
So,
That's
yeah,
laziness and bad manners.
I also just think that, if I don't know where I fell short, I mean, it isn't at every job interview that you go for that you'll always get feedback, but I think you deserve the feedback.
Yeah.
Because how then do you improve yourself, or are aware of what is actually being looked at or looked for in the market?
Yeah, actually, I think it'd be a nice maybe a nice idea for next year. Maybe we could do like a series on the whole recruitment, how you handle that, because I know from the stuff that I face, the questions that I get, it's very often linked, those rejections are very often linked to how people feel about themselves. And then when I hear that, then I know, okay, there's a lot, it's a lot more than just an application to them. And I think where the disconnect is with the people that put out these advertisements, whether it's individual firms or it's recruitment agencies, is that there's no understanding of what it takes to be an applicant, and of course knowing that that applicant has not just applied to your organization but has applied many times over. And so we have to help people, I think, deal with that um, existential crisis that crops up inevitably when they receive rejection, and like you're saying, rejection without feedback. So it's not like they know what they need to do and they're not doing it. And some of them will just, it's either they don't get back to them at all, or they just get back to them with the generic, response. So I think that will, since you are also in that employment or like treatment, I think it'll be a very pertinent thing to discuss next year, because I think that's something that when they eventually get in, a lot of them are getting in because of desperation, but when they eventually get in, I won't have to tell them, you know what, guys, don't sacrifice your dignity because you're desperate, so don't sell your soul to the devil, don't sign your contract in blood, as they say. So when you get in and you in that desperation, you're giving off desperation vibes, for want of a better word, terminology. You're basically teaching them how to treat you. So that means you'll just take anything, you'll just let them walk all over you. Because you know what? At least I got into articles. At least I got PVT. I know how hard it is to get. But at the end of the day, you're still giving off those, you're at their mercy because they were the last ones to say yes, or they were the first ones to say yes. And so you feel like you're beholden, and then you become, you give off that consent to be treated like a doormat, to be treated as someone that's very desperate to keep that position. And so that opens the door to all kinds of abuse. And then you just take it because you know what, I'm not going to, if I leave this, I'm not going to get anything. So there's a lot to be said on that topic.
No,
I think if we could deal, it affects how they carry themselves out. If they're coming from a position of desperation, then it's definitely gonna affect the way once they get in how they carry themselves out. So I think one thing to teach people is how to keep your dignity, keep your self-respect, even if you find yourself in that desperate situation. And of course, how to hold your head high even when you get in, knowing that it took such a long time to get there, how to still maintain your posture, maintain your dignity, keep your honor, all of those things, so that you can, get through that experience with hopefully mitigating, any abuse that might happen.
Yeah, and I think just to close off as well on that point, which is a very important point, is that, with a lot of people applying right now, taking all of what you just said now, and to be very mindful when you send that email application, excuse me, to say that do your research into the firm, find out as much as you can about it, because the last thing you want is, like you said, go and do it for the sake of doing it and finishing up the 2 years. And the question you need to ask yourself is, when I walk out that door after the 2 years, how much have I actually learned? Or is it just so that I can complete my admission papers, right? How confident then am I to go and practice as an attorney or a legal practitioner? And the second question is, or the second thing to consider is, be aware of being a glorified admin assistant versus a candidate attorney. So glorified admin assistant, driver, etc., etc. Okay, because my heart really goes out to those candidates that manage to secure articles at those types of firms that treat them like that. And then at the end of the 2 years, they sit there with a lot of self-doubt. Their self-confidence is crushed to the ground. And then you get people that maybe want to just engage with you and, give you some advice or whatever. And then the person hears the way you engage with them or whatever you've said to them. And then that person's opinion is, go and do articles again, because I actually don't know what you've learned. I don't know how I would help you because you don't have the skill set. So very, very important points. But thank you. And I hope everybody watching and that will watch this video in the future, once it's on YouTube, will appreciate the points that we've raised. And I think they're very important because, like you said, nobody tells them this. And, we've explained this in true context through examples, etc. So, yeah, very beneficial.
Okay, thank you, my friend. That is a wrap for this year. And hopefully
Have
we
a
can
good
make
day.
some cover some time to plan our lives for the new year.
Next year.
Yeah, lots of teasers. We put out a lot of teasers inadvertently. Hopefully we can deliver. So thank you, those that remain till this point and those that will watch. Thank you for watching, and bye.
Bye.